and welcome to Paved with Gold, the eating disorder recovery podcast. I want to acknowledge the traditional landowners on which we are recording, the Gadigal and Gubbi Gubbi people. Callie, you and I have been itching to talk about this topic for a long time, but especially you. I know that it's true for a lot of people, myself included, that the diet culture that we all grew up in played a big role in forming a lot of our views about food, shape, size, the demonization of food and fat bodies and all that kind of thing. And I don't think it's too much of a stretch to say that those views have had a significant impact on our relationships to weight, shape, and food, and can form a pretty, can be a precursor or lay the groundwork for many developing eating disorders later in life. Obviously, I know that that's not the whole foundation for eating disorders, but it can definitely play a significant role for many.
Little puzzle piece.
Yes, just a very important puzzle piece. And all of those things are usually either learned behavior or absorbed through the osmosis of living in that diet world as children, which can then be carried through to adulthood. Isn't it fun?
Woo woo. Trauma.
And now that we're seeing a lot of Gen Xers and millennials having children, or like myself, being around friends and family who have children, we have an opportunity to rethink and almost stop the cycle in a way. Many just want better for the next generation, but I think we've had a lot of time to reflect on how harmful this kind of attitude towards food can be and the effects it's had on us, so we want to prevent passing that on. But we know that that can be hard because you don't know what you don't know, and it's so easy just to pass on. Yes, and sometimes we just pass on what we do know without thinking that it could actually cause harm. So this begs the question, how the hell do you raise anti-diet kids? Well, luckily, our guest today is going to talk about just that. And at the risk of flexing here, we have some like the coolest guests ever, and today is absolutely no exception. She is yeah, I know, right? She is a pediatric dietitian and founding director of Mealtimes, which is a collective of feeding experts who design programs and work with families to change the way we feed this generation of children. She has a PhD in childhood weight management and over 15 years experience working with restrictive eaters in her clinic and online programs. She's also an expert by lived experience because she is a mum of 2 girls, so she knows what she's talking about. It is our greatest pleasure to be chatting to Dr. Kyla Smith today. Welcome.
Aww, hi guys. You can talk about me like this all the time. That was fab. Thanks.
It's aggressive compliments on this show. That's how we tend to do.
We
welcome
we
them.
really we really just love up on each other all the time. It's really nice.
All the time.
Pile it on. I'm ready.
Excellent. Good.
Yeah, we're just going to dive straight in because we have a tendency of going a long time on this podcast. So, Kyla, can you please tell us a little bit about your background? So, like, what's your origin story and how did you become such a champion in this space?
Oh, the compliments continue. Thank you.
They will roll in thick.
just get used to it. It's just going to keep
Okay, so as you said, I'm a pediatric dietitian. I grew up in a really typical kind of 80s and 90s household. I was exposed to all the diet culture stuff that we were all exposed to in that time. And when I always knew I wanted to be a dietitian, and scarily in my early years, I remember like talking about that because I was going to help people be skinny. That was my drive at the time as a, maybe 15-year-old. That's what I wanted to do, which is just, terrifying. And then I went to uni straight out of school. I studied nutrition and then dietetics. And then I worked straight away with young kids. And I was lucky enough to kind of fall into the path of doing a lot of the weight management programs in these kind of hospitals and community centres, and like ultimately doing what I had said I was going to do as a 15-year-old, which, okay. And when I was working with a lot of these families, like it was a real gift for me, and I hope it was a gift for them because a lot of what I was realizing in the time was like a lot of this stuff just is really problematic and isn't helping and is actually just making families feel really bad. That's not the gift part. But a lot of what I kind of really focused on in that time when I was developing relationships with families was like, what do they need? Like, I just don't think they need to be reading a food label to work out, like, can their child have this one thing? And so a lot of what I was learning, in that experience was just kind of connecting with families and working out what their challenges were. And I was very lucky to have the opportunity to do my PhD in this area. And part of the outcomes of my PhD was looking at the dietary interventions for adolescents in a bigger body. And it basically showed that there is no positive benefit from those interventions. And I suspect was not
Say
part
it louder for the people in the back.
this was not part of my PhD, but I suspect there are significant negative outcomes for these families as a result of these well-intended interventions, but potentially harmful and problematic. So that was kind of the start early on for me, and that progressed through. And then I have found myself in this space working with parents, working with families, and really just day to day seeing the challenges that we all face and the way that the health services that we access assume that a bigger body is reflective of not being active, not eating well, and then this kind of assumption that we just need to tell parents be healthier. And the problems that come from that, the kind of discourse I have with families around the pressure they feel and the judgment they feel. And so what's kind of happened in my career is just I say out loud on social media or in some way, I don't like this, I disagree with this. And then it's just kind of taken off in terms of, I've now built a program around this with my colleague, Gemma. She is one of the founding members of Family Mealtimes, which is our program for primary school aged kids, really looking at how we support them to enjoy food, to eat well, but to also care for their bodies and to feel good in their bodies, and for parents to be able to support that without causing harm. So it's been a journey for me. I mean, I've had to unlearn all of the things that I believed as a 15-year-old too. And so I've tried to kind of share that in my journey. Yeah.
And I guess as a dietetics student as well, right? Because I guess we hear so much of, the actual degree of, nutrition and dietetics is quite problematic at times, isn't it?
Yeah, I think there are definitely elements. I actually am very thankful to some of the lecturers that I had who really, there was still a lot of weight-centric work when I studied over 20 years ago now. So, times have changed since then. But there was a lot of good stuff in there too, from particularly my professional mentors, really trying to beat that out of us, that real kind of policing, diet police vibe. So I think that's only gotten better. I've worked in the uni for a number of years too, and that is something that is very hard. It's hard to shift in yourself, let alone in an institution, let alone teaching, let alone with a curriculum. There are so many. And I think schools face the exact same challenges. Changing what's always been done is hard.
Absolutely.
I love when our guests provide the perfect transition.
I was going to say that too,
yeah. It's
it beautifully just blends in.
Exactly. One of the things we definitely wanted to talk about was the impact and the risks of food policing, because I think it's such second nature for parents to be like, oh, you can't eat that, or don't eat this, or do eat this. And kids are going to be kids and they're going to want sugar and stuff because it tastes nice and it's fun. But then I think parents get so scared that they're just going to only eat this for the rest of their lives. And there's way more nuance than that. Shocker. So yes, can we talk a little bit about the impact and risks of food policing for children? Because we know the impacts of it as adults, but I can only imagine it gets way more complicated when we look at it on young developing brains.
Yeah, and I definitely was not aware of the level that this occurs across Australia. And it wasn't until my oldest started school and she would come home and say things to me like, oh, does her younger sister's birthday cake, does that have sugar in it? And I was like, yeah, it's a birthday cake. And she's like, oh, should we be having that? And I was like, oh, what? You've been?
Yeah.
And her birthday's in February, so she'd been at school for 2 weeks. And I was like, are you serious? This 4-year-old? What? And so there was, I know, same. And I was just like, oh, okay. And so then she said something to me about no, you have to eat your sandwich first. And I was like, do you though? Why do you have to eat your sandwich before something else? Like, what is this
Yeah,
rule
what kind
coming
of food rule that is? Yeah.
This is coming from Kinney. So I, as a naive new school mum, went in kind of hard. I was kind of angry, and
That would be me.
Probably took it a little too far in my initial, like I was polite, but I was like pretty much like, here are the statistics and here are the problems and here are the things.
I
like,
would go in
straight up.
swinging.
Now, my advice is to not go in swinging because it probably didn't work out in quite the way that I was hoping for. And I did have a strong discussion with the teacher about it, because what I had seen in our school's policy did not say this was okay, but did not say it wasn't okay. So I was... Now, if I was to go in again, I would ask about what the rules are, who's enforcing them, what it is. But I went in quite hard with some statistics, and she said to me, well, okay, but the curriculum says that we should encourage healthy choices. And I was like, cool, but you can encourage healthy choices without making her feel bad about the things that are in her lunchbox, or the things that her parents have chosen for her, or the things she might eat on her sister's birthday. Like, that is actually not about encouraging healthy choices. That's you imposing your own thoughts. And so we came to an agreement that she would not comment on my child's food, but she couldn't guarantee that she wouldn't hear that comment on other children's food. And I was like, that's
still
quite
not okay.
where I was going.
Yeah, that's still not quite
problematic.
But this is the thing, like, it's really hard to understand, because I really want to acknowledge the teacher's intentions here. Like, this was absolutely not about like causing harm, and I'm really aware of that now. I'm really aware of how much pressure there is on teachers, how many jobs they're supposed to do, how they're all absolutely doing the best for these kids, and
not getting paid enough, by the way.
No, absolutely.
To do all of these jobs.
100%. And this teacher was, really trying to do the best for these kids. And it was, even with my experience and the skills and the evidence I was presenting, it was really hard for her to like unlearn 50 years of something that she believed was like, no, I tell them the good foods and they'll eat it. I tell them the bad foods and they won't. And I was like, oh, that just doesn't work. All that happens is my child still eats these foods, but she feels bad about it. And that is a precursor to disordered eating. I do not need that in our lives. Please don't. And since then, the school, to their credit, have got on board and really, we've seen a change in the curriculum wording around, well, not the curriculum wording, sorry, we have seen changes in that, but we've seen changes in our local education department wording around not policing lunchboxes, that the department does not support that.
Amazing. But
even that change takes a long time to filter into schools and requires teachers who will drive the change, or parents who will raise it in a way that the school can take it on. But the thing that I don't want is children being made to feel bad or ashamed about what they have. And unfortunately, the number of families that I've spoken to where the child is really anxious about what the parent is going to pack because somebody's going to comment on it, or somebody's going to tell them that it's not good enough, or they're going to get something sent home with a note, or worse, they're going to be told themselves like that is not a good food. And how confusing for a little kid to think like, this person who I trust is telling me that the other person I trust, my parent, has packed me something bad for me. Like, where do you go with that? It's a really...
Over something that they had no control over either, because these are children who, what if that child had asked for those things in their lunchbox, and then they're now being shamed, probably publicly, mind you, in front of their peers.
And I mean, you bring in the economic kind of factor of that as well.
I was going to say that, yeah.
Cost of living.
So many parents, like families, are doing so tough. And, I'm sure that every parent out there has worked freaking hard to pack what's in that lunchbox for their child, to actually feed their child, to then go into, well, that's still not good enough. Holy crap. Like, that's
and
awful.
I think that's such a good point, right? Because if you are packing a lunchbox every day, that is exhausting on its own. Assuming you have a child who eats a variety of foods, who isn't bothered by like the change in texture of a sandwich when it goes in the lunchbox, which so many of our kids with sensory processing challenges are. If we think about the time and money that takes, if you think about when the groceries just haven't been delivered, or you just don't have the things in your pantry that you would usually have for whatever reason, because you are a real functioning human being living a messy life. Like nothing actually looks like, this perfect guideline. And I just really feel for those kids and families who are bearing the brunt of that judgment when, like, it's just so unhelpful. It actually doesn't even achieve the things we want it to achieve.
And I think as a parent, and, I've only got young children, but, I even feel it at times, and I've got like all of this education and knowledge around it. It's even just getting that messaging onto you as a parent, and you feel like mum guilt is hard. And like when you get this, and online, right? Like you go online and you hit left, right, and center with this is bad, this is good, this is bad, you should be feeding them this, you shouldn't, this is poison, blah, 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 blah. It's like,
Future
I'm
question,
just trying to do
way.
my best. Yeah. And like, I said this to Ash the other day. I was like, we should ask Dr. Kyla about the Yuka app because yes, exactly
okay, so
right.
I am coming in absolutely fresh. I purposefully not looked this up because I wanted everyone to experience my reaction to this in real time. So can you tell me what this Yuka app is, please?
I've never been on it, because it's just throw it in the bin. But it's basically like, how you go to the supermarket or you do your Woolworths shop. I don't know if you shop online with Woolworths, Ash. You probably don't because you don't.
I do.
You do. Okay,
yes.
Cool. And it comes up with like a little like this food underneath is healthier. Like you kind of put it in your cart and it says this is an option that's healthier for you. It's kind of like that, but in an app. And so you scan a food and it comes up with all of the like bad in inverted commas ingredients in that particular food, and basically like gives you a healthier in inverted commas option.
And this is designed for like mainly parents, I'm assuming.
It's very much targeted towards parents, I feel. I see it recommended, I think, in every mum page I've ever been in.
I think they do it for makeup and skincare and stuff as well.
Yeah,
like where they're rating these things.
So it's kind of like clean ingredients in inverted commas again.
But it's not based on anything, Ash. It's literally like the actual evidence is not there.
No. And so
I didn't expect it to be.
Well, it will highlight particular ingredients that is just like, I don't know, like magnesium or something, but like in a different word. So it's like highlighting things that it's kind of plays into that, like if you can't read the ingredients list, then you shouldn't be eating it. It kind of reminds me of that. Yeah. And so I feel as a parent, like I'm hit with that left, right, and center. And I always see it. I think I see it recommended like in every mum group I've ever been in. Like, you should just get the Yuka app. It makes it really simple. I'm like, does it make it simple? Like, how does that actually make it simple? Because then you're just playing into guilt.
Sounds like it's really confusing.
Yeah, and I would comment on that Yuka. Every time that I get a question about that, like there are people who find it helpful and like fine, all power to you, go for it. But there are so many people who I speak to who are like, all their favorite foods are marked red or orange, and like every time I give it to them I feel sick to my stomach, and I've really changed it but they won't eat it, and now I've got nothing in my lunchbox and I'm spending all this money and I don't want, and I'm like, you've literally fallen into this rabbit hole now where it doesn't work for your family. Like it just causes unnecessary and undue stress by making you think that there's a specific thing you should be looking for that is correct or right or better, and that is just not true.
Yep.
100%.
I always love your little infographics that you have on Instagram, Kyla, of the everyday foods are enough.
Yeah. And this is where I think like it's not making a lot of money for people if you're like, actually, like you can just eat normal food from the supermarket. You don't have
a
to.
Sandwich.
You can, and it will meet a lot of your nutrient needs, and you actually don't need to be obsessive or controlling or like optimizing every single thing that you put in your body. And like that often causes, so much pressure. And then I think if we go back to this idea that guilt is what drives you, I would argue that almost all parents are worried about what they're putting in their kids' lunchbox. They're all thinking like, is this enough? Have I done enough? Am I showing that I'm doing enough? Is my kid getting enough? And this is what actually drove the idea. So I sell a range of lunchbox stickers now that basically say, like,
yes, I love them.
this has
Cannot
been
wait to
packed
buy
with
them.
care and thought.
Aw.
Please don't comment. Please let my kid do what they need to do with this, because you don't know the challenges that are going on for the kid, for the parent, for the family, all of the things. Like, if a child is coming to school with a very beige, very plain lunchbox, chances are they find eating really challenging. There's a number of things going on for them. Somebody telling them that they can't eat what's in there actually causes more problems.
How stressful. And like you said, there could be sensory difficulties. There could be feeding difficulties. And, and it might be a huge freaking win that this child is eating this particular sandwich this day. Any food is better than no food. And so it's...
Yeah, what would you rather? A lunchbox like that or a lunchbox that's empty?
Empty, 100%, which is the reality for so many.
Exactly, yeah.
And this is the other thing, is that I feel like we are obsessed with this kind of perfect lunchbox, but at the other end, what we're seeing is more recent reports in Australia of increasing food insecurity, where kids don't have enough food to bring to school. Yet we're like focused on like making sure food that comes is perfect. And there are so many schools, feeding kids frozen Vegemite sandwiches from the freezer in the staff room because they don't have lunch. So like, I really think our priorities are a bit off.
Let's kind of get them a bit straight here. Yeah.
Yeah. As the resident non-child person here, I and it has been a very long time since I've been at school with a lunchbox. Can you tell me what is the school lunchbox policy these days, and what harm do these policies actually cause to children and to parents? Let's be honest, because it's a whole system. Because if it's one of those, explain to me like I'm 5. What are these policies? And because I know that you went on a massive rant about it on Instagram, because Callie sent it to me and I got equally outraged. So yes.
I think the problem is, Ash, that there are no written policies. When I did a recent audit of WA schools in primary schools, 96% had no official nutrition or food policy. So what we're seeing is a maybe general directive from admin or an individual teacher who has thoughts about the best way to do things and how that's going to be passed on. And so what I see is that for any kind of commentary around food, any kind of rules about like that is not good enough, this is not good enough, none of those things have a strong evidence base. Like the example you were talking about on Instagram, like a parent had a choc chip muffin sent home that was made with spinach, banana, zucchini, 2 eggs, something else, like a really nutritious option. And it was sent back because it had choc chips. And I was just like, oh, this is so frustrating, because you don't know what it takes for that child or that family. There are so many rules about you can bring a vanilla custard, but you can't bring a chocolate custard in some kindergartens. There's one that was
Ridiculous.
Outrageous. You can't bring rice cakes with visible seasoning. I was like,
What?
guys, what are we doing here? Like,
What does that even mean?
I think
it means you can bring plain rice cakes, but you can't bring flavoured ones. Yeah.
So you can get like salt and
'Cause
vinegar
of the
and
salt.
sour cream and chives. Oh God. And like culturally though, right? Like it's how can like entire cultures too.
And we've spent our time doing this instead of doing what?
Yeah. And like they are the overzealous types, but there is underlying rules
It
in a lot of
exists,
schools.
right?
Not written, but like you must eat your sandwich before anything else.
Yeah.
And so as an example, that is intended for them to eat their healthy, and I'm doing inverted commas, their healthy food first. But there's an assumption, like you don't actually know for these kids. Like, and if there's a lot of children who they get a sandwich sent, perhaps they got the wrong one, they got their sister's lunch, and there's a ham sandwich and they can't eat a ham sandwich for whatever reason. So that kid eats nothing, because the rule is you must eat your sandwich before you eat anything else. Or your sandwich has gone soggy, you can't eat that. You didn't feel like your sandwich, you want to eat your apple, but you can't because the sandwich
takes
comes
away
first.
all of the nuance.
Or what if I don't know, if the ham smells a bit funky?
Exactly.
So dumb.
What just like is like throwing around in my head at the moment is just like I also just think about the distrust that this creates within the child itself. Like as in like you're trying to my goal my goal I guess with my almost 3-year-old is like, and you know when he's at the age is to create a little person and then an adult who trusts themselves with food and who isn't scared of food. So then if she's going to school and this type of messaging is being given to her, like how is that creating trust? I was laughing yesterday actually And I actually thought of you, Dr. Kyla, because I did the baby meal times with her, and it was like the best thing I've ever done to help me.
Link in the description below, by the way.
Well, I think I was just really worried with my history of an eating disorder that I needed to get this right for my children, that this was a really big responsibility that I felt that I had to make sure that I didn't mess it up. And I needed to take, and I felt like I needed to take that really, really seriously. And your meal times absolutely helped me kind of relax into it, which was beautiful. And I laughed yesterday because we're in a bit of like a bribing stage with Blake to get her to do things. So like if you want to go have a bath, I'll put a little lolly on the other side of the bath that she has to get through the bath to get the lolly on the other side. So we're kind of in that stage at the moment of toddlerhood, which is really fun. But what did she do? Oh, she wanted lolly. We have a jar of lollies and she wanted a lolly out of one day. And I was just like, yep, okay. And I said, you can have 2. And then she like took 5 and whatever. And I was just like, I had to kind of be like, okay, I'm just going to relax into this. Just going to see like how she goes with it. I'm going to leave the jar there. I'm not going to rip it off her. I'm not going to take it off her. Can't be bothered with that tantrum right now. Pick my battles. And she kind of, had as many lollies as she wants. But then I left the jar there, not on purpose, just kind of left it there because I just didn't put it away. And then she just went about her day. And this jar has been sitting like in the same spot now, I reckon for like 4 days, and she hasn't touched it. And I just remembered like, oh, I trusted her. I let her kind of just, do your thing. And now, yeah, she'll ask for a lolly. Like I still like every now and then the bribe is a lolly to get into the bath or a lolly to go to the toilet or whatever. But she's just so not as interested in it as she initially was. And I was like, well, okay, all right, we're creating some trust here. And I just feel like culture and society is creating such a disconnect with kids between their bodies, food, and just everything.
Absolutely. I'll give you another example on that. In schools, one of the issues I have is with the kind of messaging around good and bad foods and, healthy or unhealthy choices, and how, again, it's well intended, but how some of these things can really be taken on by kids and not in the way that we intend. And I was talking to a mum the other day, and her son had just, 8-year-old boy had just stopped eating kind of all junk food. Hadn't said anything to her, but after dinner was like, no thanks, was just kind of leaving some stuff in his lunchbox. And she was like, what's going on here? And it went on for a couple of weeks. And then she said to him like, no, you're just going to you cannot watch TV until you have a bowl of ice cream. She was like, this is just feeling odd.
You need to have something.
So he's like, yeah. He was like, okay. He's like, but I'm not going to be big and strong if I have this food.
Oh, no.
Now,
darling.
Wait for it.
Oh, so we're wasting our
no,
outrage here.
You're getting early. The context also is that this is a really little kid. Like it has a mum who is very short, a dad who is very short. He is genetically going to be a person who is not big and tall. And so he is like, there's going to be a period of learning here where he's like, I'm one of the shortest in the class because I ate ice cream or because I had this. Right? And so this stuff that feels, healthy eating, big and strong, fruits and veggies, has this real ability. Like, it's not fact. It's not true that, like, you are shorter because of this. Like, that is just your genetics. And
it was like the insane thing where at school, I remember someone was saying, if you, for those who were made fun of for getting curly hair, someone said, eat carrots and then you can get curly hair. And then I remember a girl with curly hair stopped eating carrots because she didn't want her curly hair anymore.
Oh, sweetheart.
I know. And I'm just thinking, the language that we use around kids is so important because they latch onto them because they're sponges.
And they're also black and white thinkers. So if you think about the cognitive development of primary school age children, they think very much in categories, very much in like good, bad, right, wrong, black, white. And so talking about a topic like nutrition to children, I think is actually inappropriate because for most adults, as you would know, our understanding of nutrition and how it applies, all of us have these weird beliefs and things that we've kind of taken on. It's very hard as an adult with a fully developed prefrontal cortex to understand the nuance of nutrition, let alone our kids in a health class who are, 5 or 6.
And
like, it's just
they're
so
not being taught
inappropriate.
taught by someone who, is a dietitian either, right? Like it's a teacher, like who, they don't have the ins and outs of this. So they're kind of teaching from a book, and it's gets rid of all nuance, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And allows for a lot of personal interpretation.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
I guess that sort of brings us to sort of the meaty part of what we wanted to talk about, which is how do you foster these healthy relationships with food with kids, including things like language and fussy eating and things like that? How do we actually, foster those relationships? Because obviously we don't want to overwhelm them with knowledge that they can't actually properly process. But how do you do that in an appropriate way to lay the groundwork for a better relationship later on when they get older?
The great news is that the meaty part of this discussion is actually about doing less. So literally it is about less talking, less, trying to influence specific choices or teach about health and nutrition. I think one of the biggest things we can keep in mind is that our kids learn what is normal in terms of eating from what we do every day. And so every time you serve vegetables with dinner, even if your child doesn't eat them, they are absolutely learning over time that at dinner we have a variety of foods, some of them are vegetables. And that is their social and cultural norm that they take with them into their adult life. If every day we say to our children, you must eat vegetables at dinner, that is like just a rule that we have. It is not something that they just absorb and learn. In the same way that we just don't have to overtly teach or tell the reasoning behind, for example, you've always had a pillowcase on your pillow. So that's just what you do. Nobody ever said to you, you must always put a pillowcase on the pillow. It just is the thing that you have absorbed over time.
So true. Oh my God, I've never actually thought about that.
So much sense.
I've literally never thought about that.
I really just think that actually a lot of our intended teaching, and this food gives you this much energy, and this food is good for your heart, and this food is a short, and that stuff is not necessarily helpful. And I would say it's quite confusing. A lot of what we need to do is talk less about food, talk less about bodies, and just do and be. Trust that our kids will get there in their own time, that they will probably have some hiccups along the way, but they can look to us being like, okay, my parents never spoke poorly about their body. They didn't beat up on their own body or comment on others. They didn't, talk badly about food in terms of oh, we've just eaten absolute crap today. We're going to have this thing. They're really not getting stuck into, I really wish, my daughter before she went to school had never even heard the word sugar, because I just do not think that is help. She doesn't need to make decisions. And I want to really emphasize that when we think about the cognitive development for kids, they cannot make decisions about health. They are not thinking about their long-term osteoporosis risk. They are not thinking about chronic disease. They are literally this tastes good. This is what my family are eating. That is literally it. And so we do not need to add in this level of fear. And in fact, probably the only children who are making decisions based on health or making healthy choices are doing so to get approval from people in their lives. And if that doesn't set off a alarm bell in your head that my child is doing this to be liked or given a pat on the back or being the good girl or doing the right thing, that's a really slippery slope with eating. It's not their responsibility to make healthy choices. It's up to us to make those big picture decisions and then let our kids really just be the bosses of their body. That's literally it.
I always think about when we talk to people who do have a really great relationship with their body and food as adults, and when you get talking to them and you hear their story about their upbringing, I feel like the story always is, well, we became from a very weight neutral and food neutral home. I don't think I've ever spoken to anybody who's well, my mum was really, onto the sugar. They were really onto making sure I ate X, Y, Z and ate my vegetables at dinner, and now I've grown up and I've got a really amazing relationship with my body and food. Don't think that's ever been said. On the flip side, when you do speak to people with eating disorders, and I speak to them every day, the story is that my family was pretty toxic. Not always. There are obviously people with eating disorders that this isn't the case, but a lot of them. My mum was really, beat down on her own body. She was always on diets. This is kind of was
my
the
mum
norm
ate
inside
something
the family
different
home
at dinner than everyone else.
She wouldn't eat the birthday cake. We'd go out for ice cream, and it would be, that really food policing within the home. And then that flips me into We had a researcher named Lucy Darhill back on an earlier episode, and we spoke about the concept of fertile soil, and everything you just said, Kyla, was basically like, okay, so we're creating a really healthy fertile soil here so that the child can then go out into the big bad world, listen to diet culture talk and be like, yeah, no, like I know better than that.
Yeah. I think that's so powerful.
It's like, I'm going to listen to the person who has raised me and taught me things that I really trust, rather than this one person who told me something who's never met me, or who doesn't know anything about my circumstance. I think, like exactly what you were saying as well, Callie, about that trust, getting them to trust themselves early on, rather than feeling that they have to self-police as well.
From the get-go with Blake, when I started her on solids, I'm like, okay, we're creating, the whole goal here is for her to trust herself. I'm going to trust her, and I'm like, she needs to trust herself, even if my alarm was going, ah.
And I think one of the things that I really want for my children is that they spend almost no time thinking about their body, thinking about their food choices. Like, they make a choice and then they move on with their life, that they're not constantly like counting or thinking or calculating.
Conversation as well.
So much brain space. Like, if I think about their adult life, I don't want that for them. I don't want them to be thinking in that way or wasting that, precious time.
Ash, what did you say once about, you said to me, we were talking about like things to say to people, if they get into this diet culture talk with you. And I think you were like, what were your responses, Ash? Like, you came out with some really funny ones. I feel like it was like, I'd rather like talk to a brick wall or something like that. Like,
yeah. Like if I'm in a discussion with people, like for example, that I remember distinctly of when I was at a lunch at work, and they all started discussing diets and everything, and it's those situations where I'm like, I can't just get up and leave, which is what I would normally do, or I'd just be like, guys, can we talk about something else, because it was me versus like 7 people. I'm like, I'm not going to be that person. But what I instead I did was I started counting the bricks on the wall behind them, or I started looking at all the different cars and be like, oh, that's a Toyota, oh, that's a Yaris, or that's a blah blah blah, because I found counting bricks and counting cars more interesting than diet talk. And then someone's like, oh, what do you think, Ash? And I'm like, oh, sorry, I was counting the bricks on the wall. And then that stopped the conversation. I'm just like, I said what I said. Because I'm like, I'm not going to be...
so true. Like, does anybody want to be talking about that?
I'm not going to shut you guys down, but don't expect me to engage with this.
Yeah, it's wild. And like workplace diet talk is, ugh.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That's always a whole separate thing. But and so we talk about regularly. But I guess we've spoken. Obviously, I want to caveat. Like I know that this seems like just do less. It's so simple yet so hard. But also there are things where there are fussy children, quote unquote, or children with sensory needs, or those children who are neurodivergent who require sort of special. Or different approaches to those kind of things. And in those situations, absolutely go seek dietitians, seek other like pediatric advice about those things, especially because, it's nuanced and it's complicated. Your courses are an amazing place to start.
Thank you.
And it's all hard agree. Yeah. Having done them, agree.
And it's all about, like you having the best relationship with your child as possible and working through that. Of course, we can't cotton wool our kids forever, and we will have to send them out into the big wide world of school and all those kind of things. So what is your advice of navigating those external voices and opinions, because everyone's got a fucking opinion, on the choices that you are making as a parent in regards to your kids? And I'm thinking like parent groups, mum groups in particular, social media, daycare,
TV
school,
shows.
all of TV shows, all of those things, because obviously it's about giving our kids the information, but then how do you navigate it both as a parent, but also with your child, of when they hear conflicting information?
Well, mum groups are brutal.
I think in those mum groups though, people don't even appreciate how problematic some of their responses could be, which kind of shows you like how we're having this discussion at the moment. Like we're on totally different, we're not even in the same like suburb of playing fields. We are like so far away. And I think
agree.
A lot of the time I used to get quite involved in a lot of this stuff, and I feel like now I just let that fly, because you guys are like just very different to how I'm going to do things, and I'm
Not
just
going
going
to
to block
listen.
that out. I just don't think I have enough emotional energy to bring you on this journey when you're not even like on the journey, do you know? So go for it. That's what you're going to do. In terms of like the little things, I mean, a lot of people are worried about being that parent, that parent at school who makes a fuss or that who asks for something else. But one of the things that I have learned is that there is a significant power in pressure from parents and pressure from teachers within schools to say, I think it's time that we do something different. Here is the evidence, and trying to be as neutral as you can about some of that, like as much as you want to go in swinging. I think we have to keep in mind, and this is 100% like a personal lesson that I have learnt, because my initial instinct is not to be calm. But actually, if we can go in calmly and say, like, here's what I'm seeing, here are the like outcomes that are just unintended. What if we did it this way? And that is essentially where kind of my resources on school meal times were born, because the idea was like, if I can email and say, like, here's what I'm seeing, can you tell me about this? And you find out more about this. And then you say, okay, is this a policy? Is this based on anything? What can we do to protect our kids? So that we are all wanting the best outcomes. We're just going about it in different ways. And I do think there is a huge power, because the more parents who say, like, hey, I also think we need to do things differently, and here's a resource we could use, I think that is when we start to see change. And I was at the beginning, somebody who I really respect said to me, like, no, you cannot like just make noise. You've got to, go slowly and tread carefully. And to some extent, I agree, like we need to be soft about it. But I do think the more people that I bring along in this journey by saying, like, yeah, that sucks, here's a template, use it to just raise this with your school. The more people who start that conversation, and the more people who are that parent without being nasty or aggressive, actually that creates change. And I have seen so many schools, and like one of my favorite parts of the year is like kindy orientation, where people send me like a screenshot of what their kindy has either sent home or said about their kindergarten has said about.
Some of it is wild, isn't it?
Lunchbox. I mean, some of it makes me like really cry. But the more recently in the last few years, I've seen like people using my graphics, people saying like, we do not police lunchboxes at this school. We trust you to pack what your child needs. And that parents are like, yes, like my school does this. And like those changes are because somebody at that school, whether it was a teacher or a parent, said like, hey, what if we did this differently? Because this is what the evidence tells us now. So I think there is a real power in not sitting by when you do have an opportunity to change things. I've also been involved in some advocacy. I don't know if you remember the Bluey episode this was in my angry era. So it was a Bluey episode where the dad was feeling not great about his body. Bandit was feeling uncomfortable, and so he weighed himself. He like grabbed at his gut, and then he started exercising.
Bloody Bandit, and
Bandit, I loved you. I had so much faith in you.
Yeah, have nice things, guys.
And like, so I was not prepared for the backlash to me about like, how dare you? This is like normal. What are you saying, that we should tell our kids not to exercise?
This is the real
if
world.
you see a problem, this is a problem with your body and you should know how to fix it. And I'm like, oh,
point to where I said that, guys.
So what, you're going to teach them to be unhealthy and
Also, just because it's normal doesn't mean it's right.
Yeah, and if like you squeeze your tummy and it like squeezes, then you must go and do push-ups. Like, that is not what I want my kids to learn.
Yeah, I just can't even imagine like thinking that would ever be okay to do around your child as well, because Bandit did it in front of Bluey and Bingo.
Yes.
And like, I just, ooh.
Yeah. And it hit all the news. There were all these interviews. Carl Stefanovic said it was un-Australian of people commenting on. Good old Carl. And at that time I was like, okay, am I being too sensitive? Like, is this, like, just because it is when you look at the shows, I mean, the Wiggles now, they sing about everything's about healthy choices and doing the right thing. And, there's a vegan hot dog something and a, don't have too much of this.
Anthony eat stuff in his face with food, and it was like fruit salad, and I'm like, bro, that's not
Yes.
filling Anthony up.
No wonder he's having to eat so much of it. Like,
Yeah,
it's not
exactly.
calorie dense
Like-
enough. It is everywhere. And I do struggle with, like, when is it, you know, enough to make a point? And I just feel like Bluey was one of those ones where they do it so well that I really was like, oh,
Yeah, it
guys,
was
this is
disappointing.
disappointing. Like, I expect it from Peppa Pig. I feel like I'll talk about what I do with my kids after that, but like, whatever. And when Bluey did it, I was like, nah, we can do better than this. And like, to their credit, they changed the episode. They edited it.
Pretty quickly,
so it
too, to
had
be
a
fair.
positive spin.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, that is the power of people, I think. And like, sure, everyone was like, oh, you know, even my dad was like, oh, really? Like, is it necessary? And I was like, yeah, I really think it is.
I agree, yeah.
And so,
Because look what
That
happened.
is
It
well.
changed. And it started a conversation as well. And people probably started thinking, okay, if it's enough for Bluey to change that behavior, maybe I should think about mine. And that's that's how change happens. And I know that we're always, I hate when people put it on this idea of like self-advocacy and people are the ones who have to advocate for ourselves. But honestly,
I don't
that
think
is
a lot
how
of parents
change
have enough
happens a lot of the
tools.
time.
Well, I don't think parents have enough tools to be able to navigate that conversation with their child. I'm not going to say it correctly, it's the wrong word, but in a helpful way, perhaps. Like some parents totally might, but I think a lot of parents, and this is kind of really indicative of that, perhaps a lot of parents are lacking some tools to be able to have a really good, meaty conversation with their child if they were to watch said episode.
yeah. And they've got a heap to unpack themselves often. Like,
Totally.
all this stuff
Totally.
going on for me, like, I don't want my kid to be overweight is like the refrain here.
Yeah,
And I'm
absolutely.
like, oh,
that fear.
it's so much more complex than that. And
Such a huge fear for people.
but
yeah.
I do think if you are watching that with your child, I am less inclined to have discussions about those things with my kids unless they raise it with me, because I think they are going to be, if I went around like pointing out every option of diet culture and the messaging and I don't agree with this, in a way
gotta
I'm
be aware.
blowing it up a lot
Yeah.
more than
You're gonna notice
it
it.
is. And so
Takes away
part
their
of
neutrality.
my approach is like, if they raise it with me or they question it, I will kind of gently disagree or kind of ask more about what they're thinking. And like a lot of the time my response is like, I'm not sure I agree with that, but okay. And then we move on, because I don't actually think it's helpful to rally against it necessarily. Like, I think there are times, but most of the time what I'm showing them is like, I'm not giving that attention. That is not something that is interesting to me. That is not something that I have value on. It is like, what I'm doing most of the time is what I want you to learn. And so I just really can trust you that some of that will slide off you, some of it will stick, but you can be kind of, I can counter some of it, but I can also trust that like you will learn this over time too.
Yeah. It's like we were saying before we started recording, which is we're going to mess up. And so it's giving people giving your children the tools in order to help them unfuck up later
Combat
down the
it.
line, basically.
Yeah.
I know we've only got you for a short time. So I want to close out with one final question, which is, what is your favorite part of what you do now? And I kind of feel that we already kind of touched on it, but I just wanted to
I love this
hear
question.
what is your favorite part?
My favorite part of what I do is seeing the change or hearing about the change in individual families where parents get the opportunity to do things differently with their kids. And so I have a little folder in my phone every time somebody sends me a message that says like, thank you, you did this thing, or I've changed this thing because of what you've done, that I like to kind of go back to. And, you know, when Carl Stefanovic is calling me un-Australian. But I
even mean?
think exactly. I think to see, like, going back to the point that Kelly made earlier, I think when you feed your kids for the first time, it brings up all of your own stuff about food that maybe you thought you dealt with, or maybe like you weren't aware of. And there are so many people who come to me in those early years who are like, I just didn't know I could do it differently, or I didn't know this was possible, and here's what my child did, and here's the thing. And like, I love that I can have that impact for families and then for these kids in the future. Like,
Yep.
that's big change, and I feel really privileged to
Huge.
have that opportunity to be a
you're
part in
helping
that.
prevent eating disorders. Let's call it what it is.
It is.
Because I
It
think
100% is, though.
that's essentially what this podcast is about, is helping to ideally prevent eating disorders later down the line and also help how they're treated. And a lot of that starts from the core, starts from, childhood. So you're doing an incredible stuff. And the last thing I'll say is I love that you mentioned that you have that little sort of, I call it a reassurance folder. I have one too. It's like every time I doubt myself or anything, every time I get nice comments about my work or things I've done, I drag it into this folder.
This is really nice. Yeah, it's a great idea.
And every time you question yourself, you doubt yourself, or Carl Stefanovic calls you un-Australian, you can go into that folder and read that, not just because if I'm doubting myself, I'm also doubting every single person who's said nice things about me.
Oh, I love this.
And I hold I held way too much respect for the people who've said those nice things about me to question them, because that's essentially what I'm doing.
And the Carl Stefanovics.
Yes, exactly.
And I think that's such a great point, because you can get caught up in there's not enough change, and there are still schools doing this, and there are still and all of these things, and my mother's group is still saying this, but actually those people have had a significant change, and that is enough.
And that's how it starts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I love it.
Oh, this has been amazing. Thank you
so
much, Dr. Kyla. And even as someone who doesn't have or intends to have kids,
I'm
it's
a huge
so
fangirl, so it's, yeah.
But it's so heartwarming to hear that there is so much being done to raise the next generation, to have a better relationship with food. Because like we said, you're preventing eating disorders, or at least helping minimize the impact that they might have in the future. And I've learned so much in just this short 50-minute conversation. And I know that there'll be so many people listening who are hearing this and benefiting from your wisdom. This is your chance to plug anything and everything that you would like. Where can people find you and access all of your amazing work? Plug.
Sure. I like to shop on Instagram, so I'm Dr_Kyla, Kyla. And then my services, you can head to mealtimes.com.au is where they're kind of all housed. You can choose the best fit. I offer services for parents who are introducing solids, navigating the fussy years, and then navigating these kind of body image and eating challenges, and just general feeding your family, packing a lunchbox at family mealtimes for primary school aged kids. So yes, I would love to.
And all the stickers and stuff are there as well on your website as well.
Yeah.
Yes. All of the links will be in the show notes, so head there. I'm not saying that following Dr. Kyla is mandatory, but I'm also kind of saying that.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
And what are you doing? If you haven't already.
Thank you so much. You are absolutely amazing. And
my absolute pleasure.
We are so lucky to have people like you working in this space, because you're a game changer.
Oh, we're finishing on compliments too. You guys. I'm loving it. Thank you. It was a pleasure to talk through this.
Oh, it was our pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
Cool. This is the outro. That's all for today's podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. And if you like what you hear, please consider giving us a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. That would be amazing. You can follow us on YouTube and Instagram at Paved with Gold Pod. Send us an email at pavedwithgoldpod@gmail.com, or visit our website pavedwithgoldpodcast.com. All of those links will be in the show notes with extra resources and where you can find Dr. Kyla. Go there right now. It's amazing.
Honestly, not just saying that though, like I said, I actually did the courses when Blake was a baby, and I still refer to everything of Dr. Kyla's now, and she honestly helps me so much as a mum feeding my children. Like, I can't even. We're not just even just because she was a guest.
Yeah. You wanted lived experience, guys. Listen to that. Lived experience honestly, of the courses. So there you go. yeah, 100%. And so much of, when Blake is eating, I teach Drew about it as well. It's game changer. So good. Until next time, stay safe, and we'll talk to you again soon. Bye.
Bye.
This podcast is general in nature and has not taken your personal circumstances or medical history into account. We are here to share our own experiences and the things that we have found helpful throughout our own personal recovery journeys. Please remember that each person's journey and circumstances are different, and not all of the information contained in this podcast may be relatable to you.
It's important you consult your own GP or recovery team to seek out tailored advice before making any important decisions relating to your own health and recovery process. If you have found any of the content in this episode distressing, please contact your care team or a medical professional. If you or someone you know is in crisis and needs help now, please contact emergency services in your region immediately.